And in small business, when you take a 10% hit, that's a significant hit to a business that has a 10% profit margin, right? That can destroy your year. Like it's, I don't know. It was a significant financial strain. And then with Community Futures coming in and helping us get the funding from the Red Cross, it was really, really needed, really beneficial to New World.
This is the third in a series of videos documenting the support Community Futures has provided to businesses, Indigenous communities, and not-for-profit organizations that were impacted by the 2017 wildfires in British Columbia. This video focuses on those businesses and how the assistance they received from Community Futures is helping them rebuild.
Barkerville in particular is a National Historic Site since 1924, and it's also a Provincial Heritage Property since 1958. So it's 1,150 acres, and it's the largest historic site of its nature in Western North America. And Cottonwood House Historic Site is this sort of a sister project of Barkerville because it's a roadhouse, but it is the oldest preserved roadhouse in North America. So there are two pretty major assets in the Caribou. The economic impact with Barkerville and Cottonwood combined is about $25.5 million for the region and province. And just the economic impact on Quesnel alone is about $4.2 million. So annual operating budget's about $3.1 million. Annual projects budget or capital budget is about $3 million. So it's a fairly big function. We get 60,000 to 70,000 people a year, and that generates a lot of economy. 30% of that business is from different parts of the world and different parts of Canada and Western Canada. And then the other 70% are BC participants. What we did was we outreached to Community Futures to get their business counselor out to talk to everybody that was operating a company in Barkerville, so that they could at least establish a relationship with CF, because we knew that if any of them were going to get into some difficulties, that at least Community Futures has that loaning capacity. And all the merchants out there do have relationships with their bankers, but we knew that things weren't looking well for everybody in the region, so we wanted to make sure we established that loan link, even if it was a short-term thing as well. And so the business counselor came right out to the site and met with the merchants with coffee or having lunch with them, and that really made a difference. So then subsequent to that, when the programming came about and the Red Cross got involved, the Red Cross was sort of having trouble deploying their resources. They were pretty thin on what staff they had. So when Community Futures was able to bring on the business ambassadors for wildfires, that was better, because because we already had this relationship with Community Futures, with the business counselor on potential support, business planning and loan support. Right away we could swing them over to that Red Cross coaching on how to get an application in, an effective application. And then subsequent to all that, then the training funds started to flow through Western Economic Diversification and other partners. And because, again, that relationship was already established, those companies could engage again in another support to keep their businesses stable. And from all the conversations I've had, if it wasn't for those kind of resources, probably more than 50% of those business situations would have been in trouble, serious trouble. So that full scope of support, was very important.
So I was hoping to make Unity kind of somewhere where tourists could come in and feel comfortable that they kind of get what I'm doing here, the sort of city-fied tourist. It's very familiar. It's kind of like a Starbucks feel in here. So yeah, it really impacted me, and it was like there was no traffic whatsoever. Even though we didn't get evacuated as a community, we were totally shut down. I learned about the Red Cross funds, I believe through Community Futures. They were sending out emails basically to businesses, and they were right on it. They were, you need to apply for this funding. I as an individual, I applied for the funding. And as a business, I actually emailed a bunch of folks in town that, I became the forwarding email person to many different businesses that maybe couldn't access their email at the time. So, yeah, they live right across the street from me, their offices. So I kind of feel like they're my big sister over there, and Deb and the crew there. So they were totally on top of what is available and encouraged people, made it look very simple in terms of like, don't be overwhelmed, it's okay, it's online, you can figure it out, and if you need help, we're here for you. So definitely, they were on board from the beginning. By the time, July into June and into August, I had a bunch of debt that basically there was no income coming in. So I was already behind the 8 ball a bit in terms of my business, expecting a pretty good tourist market that summer. And I had some debt, and I said to Deb, I don't think I have to close down like right now if I don't see this getting any better. Like, got $4,000 or $5,000 in debt that is not going to stop. So I applied for an emergency fund with the idea that I later found out that the Red Cross funds basically would help me pay back that loan. So there was, to me, at that time, I don't think we all knew the bigger Red Cross funding that was going to happen for big business, or excuse me, small business. But it was something that Deb and Community Futures were telling us about. It's going to come, don't worry, And so they felt confident in having this emergency loan for myself based on that idea, is that there will be funds to pay off your loan. So it was a tremendous relief. It was my rent, it was my telephone bill, it was my hydro bill, things that you need basically to continue operating.
Well, we ended up getting evacuated down towards Kamloops and stayed there, so we weren't too far away. But yeah, you didn't know what was going to happen, so you have all this inventory and business sitting here, and if the fire was going to roar through, would we lose everything? You just didn't know that. There was updates from certain people that stayed back in town, so we could follow what was going on, so we knew that the community wasn't actually on fire, which was good. So we knew we had something to come back to. It was just a matter of what we're going to come back to at that time. Yeah, the surrounding area definitely, like if you're just outside the community base, the fire basically surrounded the whole community. It's quite scary. You just go 5 minutes out of town and there's a lot of impact. Community Futures were sending out emails saying that they had some funding available if anybody needed some help. They had a loan program going at the time that was interest-free, no payments at the beginning, such and so forth. So I contacted them and took advantage of it just because I didn't have any cash flow. Without any customers, there is no cash flow, and I still had to pay the rent, you still have to pay your suppliers, all those bills don't go away. So yeah, we needed an infusion of money. So I got a hold of Jeannie at Community Futures, and she set it up for me.
Following the initial outreach provided by the business ambassadors, Community Futures developed a series of workshops and a self-directed training program that allowed small business owners that were impacted by the wildfires to access the support they needed. That support ranged from staff and employee training to retooling their business operations.
Originally, I was a salon and spa, or I am a salon and spa. We help women celebrate their beauty. That's basically what we do. And we have always had a small boutique, with lines of skincare and hair products and hair accessories and, anything that would help women to celebrate their beauty, we had. And then after the wildfires, I heard from Greg, actually, that there was this grant to hire an expert. So I did apply, and I did get an expert. And she is a retail expert. And I spoke to her many times before I actually got the grant funding to make sure that I was going in the right direction. And I got the grant. So then what we became was a salon and spa with a boutique. So now we helped women with their clothing and their accessories and their handbags and shoes, and then we also have a little bit of home. So we've added all of that, and I still have that expert. I speak to her weekly. She's helped us fine-tune lines and brands. Like I learned to test. Like we brought certain things in small quantities. We tested them. If they were good, we did more with that company. If that was not maybe a mistake, but maybe not as a big a seller or mover, not as much interest, then we just backed off and let that go. And so that's what she's been doing. And the business has grown. And we now I've hired another person to help me. Like she's going to be my right-hand person, and I'm starting her out with all of the social media, and we're developing a website, which is another grant that I got for that kind of training, and they're training her. So, how can you go wrong, right? It's like everybody that you bring on your team has access to your expert. She helped with all the sales training. I could have never done that because I didn't know how to sell a shirt myself,
So to start with the wildfires in 2017, a lot of our customer base, once you're kind of in a panic mode like that, everybody starts pulling away and focusing more on their livelihood and their families, more than rather trying to focus on fixing their vehicles. For one, that was our primary loss of revenue. We saw a huge decline in maintenance. Luckily, we did have a few bigger customers that helped us kind of a little bit through there, but it was definitely about a 20 or 30% drop, just because everyone was kind of in panic mode. I contacted Community Futures once I found out about the grants. A little bit of online, actually, some fellow businesses around town were talking about it, and that's kind of how I heard about it, and definitely started to apply at that point. So through my connections that I found at Community Futures there, I have decided to pursue my Class 1 driving training, and there's a large grant to help assist me into getting that training. It was something I always thought about, but I've never really had the time or the upfront money to do it, so it's definitely a huge help.
I'm extraordinarily passionate about food, and the last 8 years I've gotten really into coffee, coffee culture, making coffee, and now thanks to Community Futures, I was able to go on to a program that paid for my training, and I learned how to repair coffee makers, coffee machines. So that Lord Mozoka is a $20,000 coffee machine. So when you start taking things apart, you really want to know what you're doing, right? And so I was really happy that I was able to take that course, come back and save myself a lot of money. Like I can do my own repairs, I can do my own maintenance. And it was really beneficial to New World. That type of training is expensive because I have to pay for that guy's time, right? And his time is expensive because he can be out fixing machines at $80, $90 an hour, and I paid for 2 full days of training. So it was a significant amount of money. And then as a small business person, every dollar counts, right? And if I had to, I probably wouldn't have done it. In fact, I know I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't be able to have the financial resources to do that kind of training if it wasn't for Community Futures to step forward with that program. And really, really, really beneficial to New World.